Hello and welcome back to Agile Project's Practical Project Management Seminar 5. I'm Nick Hollis, I'm the Managing Director of Agile Projects. So I'm just going to take you through the final seminar. I think everybody's here, so we'll crack on. Just a reminder about who we are. As I said, my name's Nick Hollis, I'm the Managing Director of Agile Projects. Alongside me is Russ Hadfield, who's delivered the first 4 seminars to you. Russ is responsible for our Project on Demand system. And Peter Storer works alongside us as a project management consultant, delivering lots of consultancy and additional training. And the fact that we've got over 60 years change management experience qualifies us to hopefully deliver some training and some information that you find useful. Okay, let's crack on. Just a reminder, the training course is all about giving you an understanding of how we organise, plan, monitor and control projects. And that's the key theme of everything that we do in the 5 seminars and the way that we talk you through each of the subjects. And a reminder, the first 4 seminars started off with an introduction to project management, talking about the waterfall methodology, why projects fail, understanding risks, risk management and estimating, why it's important that we identify risks, how we deal with risks when they become issues. The third seminar, understanding quality management, talking about quality plans, change management and how change management can help us to manage the quality of projects. And of course suppliers, we want to make sure that our suppliers deliver quality to us. And then finally, Russ was talking about project planning and how we can use tools and techniques such as Gantt charts, work breakdown structures and the product breakdown structure to help us to think about how we break down the project activities and the products that we need to develop into manageable chunks. If you remember the elephant analogy, we don't eat an elephant in one hole, it's too big. And then today's seminar, we're going to talk about budget management. So we're going to make sure that we manage our costs and don't overrun our budget, because that can be painful. Perhaps we'll talk something about management styles. As a project manager, we have to be a leader in a team, and so there's different styles that you can adopt at different stages. Similarly, communication is exceedingly important in running projects. And then finally, just a little touch around what Agile is all about. And you'll see the diagram there just gives you a little flavour about what we call backlogs, sprints, scrums, all familiar stuff to Agile practitioners. Okay, so firstly, let's talk about some budget management and how we manage costs. There's a great statement here, people get really upset if we waste their money. Well, of course they do. As a project manager, generally we're not looking after our own money. Sometimes we might be the customer as well as the manager, but normally we're a professional project manager managing somebody else's money and looking to invest that money wisely. So it's really, really important that we look after that budget that we're given and spend it wisely. We often break down the costs into 4 different categories to make it easy for us to look and control the spend. Obviously we've got the cost of the project team, the people that are doing stuff for us. This might be a business analyst, a designer, an architect, testers, and of course developers if you're developing a website. So running a team of people around a project needs to be tracked closely. We need to understand how much time they're spending on it, and we need to understand whether they are staying on track of their estimates as well. Capital expenditure, when we're buying stuff that we need. If we're building a website, we'll need servers, we might need PCs. If we're building a house, then we'll need bricks, we'll need all sorts of other things. So we spend money on things, and again, we need to plan for that and spend wisely in terms of how much capital we need to buy in. Thirdly, perhaps any external consultancy or suppliers. So we account for this separately to our internal project team. And then finally we have general expenses. So this could be travel, this could be meals, and it could be all sorts of things to keep the team ticking over if it's a long project. So we have a general fund where we put smaller expenses and make sure that we don't overspend that one as well. So 4 categories, generally good idea to keep projects under control. Again, you see we've broken that down into manageable chunks. So let's have a look at the cost management of the project team. So you'll see that we've got 3 team members on this project, myself, Russ and Tom, and we're forecasting that they've got a unit cost which is different by each resource, and obviously that's quite often the case in project teams and internal teams. Your business analysts or your designers might cost you different amounts to your developers or your testers. So we have a unit cost per resource. Also we have a forecast, that's our estimate of how much we think we need to budget for each of those resources. So for Russ, we're forecasting that he does 10 days in January, 10 days in February, and with a total cost of £2,500. And then we're able to track forecast versus actuals. When it comes to the end of January, we know how much time Russ has spent on the project. In this example, he's actually spent the 10 days that we forecast, which is good. But I only spent 4 of the 5 days that was forecast. So currently at the end of January, and in fact at the end of February on this forecast, I'm coming in under budget because I've not spent as much time as I was expected to. But that's obviously only one view. It may be that we're behind schedule in terms of what we're trying to deliver. It might be that we're on schedule, in fact, in which case we're going to come in under budget. Or it might be some other factor associated with that. So you can't always tell from the raw numbers whether you're on track for your budget spend. All you can say is at this particular stage we're under budget, and you can then potentially reforecast to the end of the project as to whether you're coming under budget or whether you'll need to extend your budget. So we've got the 3 resources, each having different costs. Forecasts for January and February, and the actual days spent at the end of each month when we top those up and we compare the two to give us our totals. And here we're showing that we forecast that we were going to be spending 9,000 on this project, and we've come in under budget at 7,900. Again, very simplistic way of looking at it, but a very useful tool just to make sure that when you go back into your customer and your project sponsor, you can be clear to them at any stage whether you're on track to meet the project budget or whether you'll expect to require more funds. Here's a similar example for our capital expenditure again. So this is our cost plan of forecast versus actuals. We're going to buy some PCs for our website. Similarly, for external consultancy, we need some design from our designer, and we're forecasting 5 days in January, actually spent for 4 days. Similarly in February, so we're going to come in under budget for the design. And finally, you would do the same, or you could do the same for general expenses. Generally, you'll find the general expenses are a lesser spend because they're just for this and that to support the project. So it's not quite as important to track those at such a finite level. Let's get back to the original statement. People get really upset if we waste their money. It's not our money, we're managing it on their behalf. It's vital that we monitor on a regular basis the costs of the project. We cannot get this wrong. If we don't have any more money to spend on the project and we run out, we can't finish the project and we've wasted all of it because we've achieved nothing. This is a way to rapidly lose your job if you're a project manager, if you're not on top of the costs associated with delivery. I don't think we can emphasize that enough. Okay, so a little bit about different management styles and running of teams. We talk here about 4 different styles, and it's useful to just understand these different styles just so you can proactively understand how you can use these different styles in different given situations. It's much easier to be able to think about using a style of management rather than always using your own natural style, because you want to achieve different things at different times. So we have an autocratic style, a democratic style, consultative, and what we call laissez-faire. So first one, autocratic. As you can imagine what the name suggests, an autocratic manager will dictate orders to their staff and make decisions without any consultation. This leader likes to control the situation they're in. So if this is your natural style, you can see traits of yourself in this, then you'll understand how to use this style in different situations when it's not always the right style to be using. It's very useful in projects, particularly when we've got set deadlines, because we want to be able to make decisions quickly. We don't need to consult everybody in the team about that decision. We just need a decision so we can move on and get the website built to the time frame that we set ourselves, that the customer is expecting. What you have to watch out for is that this type of management style can very quickly lead to demotivated staff. And of course, demotivated staff aren't 100% committed, they don't deliver as well in the end, and you have the risk that you will increase staff turnover. People will leave your project because they don't have any skin in the game. It's your project and it's nothing that they feel committed to. So you have to be very careful when you're in this mode of operation. The democratic manager, on the other hand, is somebody who is quite happy delegating authority to staff and giving team members responsibility to complete tasks given to them. And of course, this allows staff to complete each task, each activity, using the way that they feel comfortable working, not necessarily the way that the manager is barking the orders. So employees feel involved in the decision making, giving them a sense of belonging and motivation. Of course, when you're in this mode, you have to be aware that this can slow down decision making, can slow down the project in terms of deliverables, because you're constantly working through whether that decision is right for everybody. And again, you can see how that can deflect from delivering key activity on the project. Thirdly, consultative. So a consultative management style is often viewed as a combination of the previous two. The idea here is that you're seeking out views and you're looking for people to have opinions, so you're getting that involvement from your team members, but ultimately you need to pull that all together and then make the final decision. And people need to understand that ultimately you're accountable for the delivery, and once that decision is made, they all need to get behind you and support that decision making. And finally, just talk a little bit about being a laissez-faire manager. Here we set the tasks, we give staff complete freedom to complete the task as they see fit. So we stand a little bit away from the activity. But what we need to do is make sure that we're available to coach or answer questions and perhaps supply additional information if required. Now the danger here is that if your team members see you as too aloof, too laissez-faire, they won't feel comfortable coming to you with questions, and you may not necessarily get what you want because they will have delivered it their way. So with little direct guidance, staff might begin to feel lost, and again they might not necessarily reach the goals that you originally set them within the time frame that you need. If you're in a position where you're perhaps managing several projects and you don't spend enough time with one project or another, then you may find that one or two of those projects starts to go astray if you don't keep checking in with them. It's really important to keep swinging around and checking in with people on their project deliverables and making sure that you're available for questions. And even if that's just informal, over a coffee, at the morning meetings, Again, just to show some visibility so they know that you're always available to help them through. So, a little bit about team development. The Tuckman model has been around for quite a while, but it's quite useful to think in terms of project teams, because clearly as a project we build a team quite quickly to deliver a piece of work and then we disband again. So the model has 5 stages: forming, storming, norming, performing and adjourning. Let's take the first one, the forming stage. Obviously focuses on when the team comes together, forming the team. And what was noticed by Tuckman and colleagues was that team members initially behave quite independently in this early stage. They don't yet have any skin in the game in terms of the project or the team. They may well be motivated to do their best, but they'll be uncertain of the overall team goals, and so they'll be a little bit lost in terms of what they can contribute. The role of the project manager in this space then is to bring that team together, to start to show them the way to form that team. As a project manager, it can be quite useful to use a particular management style in this early stage. And of course that management style at this stage could well be the autocratic style. We need to bark some orders, we need to give people some sense of direction so that they can start to have some activity that they've got to complete. The second stage, storming, very much as the name suggests, all around conflict. So here we've moved on from forming the team, we're now looking to build the team ethos, understand what the team is all about. So team members will bring ideas to the table about where the direction of the team generally and how we'll meet the objectives of the project, but that can quite easily create conflict. Team members have got their own personalities that they want to bring to the table, and they'll confront each other's ideas and perspectives, and of course the whole point of this is that we're starting to understand how each other ticks and what skills and strengths each team member can bring to the team. The project manager has the role here of guiding that team through this transition, making sure that that conflict doesn't get out of hand, making sure that it's manageable. So if we're going off subject because two people are raging about a particular issue that in fact the rest of them aren't necessarily interested in, the project manager needs to step in and bring that conversation back to the project. Here we use a slightly different management style. We're now more interested in a consultative style. We're looking to bring people's ideas to the table, so we are looking for them to contribute, but we still need to move the conversation along at a pace, so we'll still need to bring those ideas together and then make decisions. The third phase, norming. Here the focus is on the effectiveness of the team. So we've been through that conflict phase, we've started to gel now as a team. We've got team values established, so everybody understands how each other ticks. Everybody, not just the project manager, makes a conscious effort to resolve problems and to resolve conflict, because the group wants to achieve that group harmony, because they know that they've got some particular project goals and they all understand those to deliver. The project manager's role here is to steer the team to find the team relationships that work through any compromise in terms of conflict. And our management style starts to move to a more democratic style, because we're starting to trust the team to make the right decisions. Finally, in terms of project delivery, we talk about performing teams. And in fact, as a project manager, you may find that you never quite get your team to the performing stage, but that's okay, because these teams form very quickly and disband quite quickly. But if you can get to the point where you're a fully performing team, then your project will run really, really smoothly. So here, the focus being on the flexibility of the team to achieve goals. So anybody will pick up any task and be able to run with it. So the team members have got a clear understanding of what's required to complete the team tasks. And of course, everybody will help each other to achieve. It's not just about individuals now. Everybody wants to share in the team success. That's the primary focus, the primary goal. With a performing team, if you've got one or two individuals that aren't quite making it into that team, quite often it's a good idea to think about whether they're the right fit for that project team, because they can quite quickly bring the team back down to a lesser level. Here, when we've got a performing team, the project manager can allow the team to make the majority of decisions. So we're not necessarily guiding and directing anymore. We've got a team that can deliver this very much with us just in the background. So then our management style can remain democratic, or if you're running several teams and you feel confident that this team is really performing, then you can perhaps move more to a laissez-faire style of management. And again, all of these things, it's all to do with understanding these styles, thinking consciously about whether you have to exert particular pressures on the team at a particular stage to get the right level of performance based on where you are in your project. So just some interesting concepts to give you when you're running your first project. Finally, we talk about adjourning. When we've delivered our project, then clearly we don't need the team anymore. We move on to other projects. Team members will go and form parts of other teams. So here, the focus being on expanding the team. We've achieved our goal, we've built our house, we've delivered our website. But the project manager needs to continue to motivate the team. We've got some things that we just need to tidy up. In our house build, we've perhaps got the snagging to finish off. We've got to make sure we hand it over nicely to the customer. So each team member needs to understand that they've still got some commitment to the team. They still need to be motivated. And quite often the project manager just needs to give feedback about how well each individual has done in that project team, how individuals have grown in terms of the assignments and the contribution they've made. And our management style now falls back to a more consultative style again. Okay, so moving on to a little bit about how we do communication within projects as a project manager. Here's a very common understanding of what happens in terms of the way we communicate. Obviously, communication is a two-way process. If we are, as a project manager, looking to get a message across, we can do that in different ways. But when you're receiving the message as the person looking to understand what's being asked, then we receive that in different ways. So communication is all about lots and lots of factors. If we're writing an email, all we've got available to us is words. In fact, people pick up about 7% of that information. If we've got the use of the telephone or other audio methods, then we're increasing our ability to get a message across and to have that message interpreted correctly by the use of the voice. But actually, where we want to get to is face-to-face conversations where we can use full body language. So 55% of good communication is based around body language, eye contact, posture, gesture, facial expressions. And of course, that's why we've constantly tried to push for use of video in communication methodologies. Going forward, you can see that that will become a sort of common way of us communicating, particularly when you want that understanding that the message has been received rather than just given. Again, when you're thinking about how you communicate, think about that. Emails, only 7% of the communication message really gets through, so we try to avoid emails as much as we can. You might have a communications management plan in your project management tools that you use. Certainly some of the things that you would use in terms of formally communicating or communicating with your team are listed here. Informal communication, we love that as project managers. We go up and talk to our team member in the morning over a coffee and just say, hey Jim, how's it going? Anything you need from me? Have you got everything you need to get going for the week? These sorts of general conversations just allows us to pick up about any particular concerns informally. It's good to run a weekly or bi-weekly team meeting to get everybody together to give some focus. With our project sponsor and our customers, we might run monthly steering group meetings to give them some feedback about how the project is going, but more importantly, to allow them to make key decisions. It's important that our stakeholders are the ones that make decisions about the direction of our project. And so we bring them together formally so that we can steer them about the types of decisions they need to make and how they need to give us our orders to deliver the next part of the project. So it's important that these stakeholder meetings come together. If possible, bring those together face to face if you can, and if not, then perhaps video or finally just audio calls. But the more that you can get people to be talking around these decisions, the better you can get those decisions to be made. Formal status reports. Project managers are very good at putting weekly status reports together around RAG statuses, red, amber, green, just to highlight to busy managers around the company about how the website project is coming on, and everybody just wants to be able to just see that at a glance as to whether there's any concerns that they need to be worried about. And then finally, stakeholder reviews. We want to bring our stakeholders in to perhaps review the business requirements that we've documented to make sure that they've understood all of those and they fit in across all of the business lines. We might similarly bring them in to look at the way the design is coming on. So the more and more that we get our stakeholders involved in formally looking at how we're progressing through the project, the better that we will make their final delivery. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the waterfall methodology, which is the sort of standard approach in terms of sequential. In software development, there's a lot of talk about this methodology called Agile, and as the word suggests, it tries to be a little bit more reactive to changing business needs and requirements that aren't necessarily quite as well defined as we might like. So the way we've tried to explain this is really around the rings of the onion. In the centre there, we have got our first, what we call our first sprint, which is to build a Contact Us page on our website. And then once we've done that, we would then go out and build the About Us, and then the add order, and then the view order, and the mend order, track order, delete, and make payment. So there's what we call sprints going on sequentially normally to allow us to build little snippets of our final product. And as you can see, if you go back to last week's planning seminar where we talked about products, then in fact you can see that those sprints are about building those products individually. And the idea is that once you've built one, you get some idea about whether your ideas for the next sprint and the next product are still valid. So you're constantly able, because you're building them in succession quite quickly from start to finish, you're able to feed back into the loop, into the cycle about actually what you want in terms of the next product set. And this is the cycle of events that happens within an Agile project. We have what's called a product backlog. So again, if you think back to the product breakdown structure, we've got those products that we want to build. In the earlier slide, we talked about those products being part of the onion. So we look at our product backlog and we say, which products do we think we can build as part of this next cycle of the build? So there we take those into our sprint backlog, and we've decided which products are in that sprint. And then we run a cycle that is only normally 2 to 4 weeks of rapidly building those products or that product. And that allows us to very quickly give the customer something that they can see and feel and understand. And this is what's called the potentially shippable product increment. We build something that the customer can get their hands on and can potentially be launched. We don't always launch it, but it's something that could be potentially launched. So the customer can then feed back into our product backlog and actually what we want in terms of the next sprint or the next product set that we might change from where we originally thought. In order to keep that 2 to 4 week cycle moving, we have what's called a daily scrum meeting, and that's where every day the progress against each of the activities in the backlog is tracked, and if we don't think we will achieve everything that we set ourselves within that 2 to 4 week sprint period, then we prioritise the ones that we're going to achieve, and we put some of the ones that we're not going to achieve back into the backlog. The activity is very much around having daily stand-up scrum meetings. And again, if you think, when we talked about communication, we talked about face-to-face communication being beneficial. Within an Agile project, it really is the best way to run. I have seen Agile projects run across the globe, but it works much better if you can co-locate everybody in the team, because they're able to bounce ideas and thoughts off each other. So we have this daily stand-up. In the first thing in the morning, we report back about what we've done and what we're doing for the next day. A very, very sharp, succinct activity. So we co-locate our project team if we can. If you can imagine that the customer is continually refining what the requirements are based on what we build, it's really important that we get good access to the customer. I've seen Agile projects fail quite often when the customer isn't available. They're off busy doing business as usual activity, running the business. And if we don't get access to the customer, we don't get that feedback, so we continue to build. And of course, we're not necessarily taking that feedback and building the right things and adjusting the build to what the customer is seeing going on in the business. So much more than if you're running a waterfall project. Agile, it requires almost the customer to be embedded in the project team, and that can be very difficult to set up. And we have what are called Scrum Masters to run all of this. So as a project manager, you could well double up as a Scrum Master to run all of these daily activities to make sure that the flow of products into the backlog is taking place efficiently, and to try to make sure the customer is on board. So why use Agile over Waterfall? Clearly, if we've got many requirements that are unclear or are prone to change through the point at which we want to launch our overall product, then Agile can assist very much so on this. Whereas with Waterfall, we're defining all those requirements up front in one go, and that could take 3, 4, 5 months to complete. And during that stage, all you've got is a set of documentation. With Agile, as soon as you understand one particular product, you get off and you start building it. With Agile, it's much harder to manage that project scope, and of course trying to keep track of the budget and not necessarily knowing what you're doing next and how big this thing might get. It's very difficult to run the budget in the same way with Agile, and all you can do is to fund yourself around a number of sprints that you're expecting to be able to finance, and expect that you'll be able to get your final end product deliverable out of that. So finally, our usual wrapping up slide for each of these seminars. If you forget everything else, please remember these 4 things. Cost management is so important. You can't allow your budget to overrun without you knowing it. Maintain that cost plan, understand the forecast, track your actuals on a regular basis, and make sure that you're able to advise your stakeholders if there's some concerns about funding. You can't deliver a project on your own. You need a team around you normally, so you'll need some team skills. So we talked about the concepts of different management styles and how project teams come together under the Tuckman model. Don't forget to understand how to communicate across your team and your stakeholders. Have different tools available to you. Perhaps write up front a communications management plan that allows you to say, this is how we're going to tell everybody what's going on our project. And finally, we just gave you some ideas about why we use Waterfall as opposed to Agile in different circumstances. Waterfall has been around for many, many years around building all sorts of things. Agile has come to the fore over the last 10-15 years in the software development industry, specifically because we have a continually changing world, and it's very difficult for us to write detailed requirements up front when we're not quite sure exactly what we want. Again, it's just different methodologies for different purposes. Neither one is any more right than the other. Okay, so I think that wraps us up in terms of the 5 seminars. I hope that's been informative for you. I hope that you've enjoyed the journey with us. Don't forget, we have our Facebook group that's open to all after the sessions. Obviously, we'll send the link out to these for you to catch up on if you need to after the seminar. We pick up messages on the Facebook group at least every other day, So if you've got any questions you need to ask us on that, please place those there. And obviously those are questions and answers that can be shared across anybody in the group. So we hope to be able to answer those and give you some additional pointers along the way. Don't forget that we also have our product called Project on Demand that we've built to support the way that we teach project management. It's a full software as a service that allows you as a project manager to run any project in terms of the waterfall methodology. Take a look at that at your leisure. And again, if you've got any questions on that, please don't hesitate to shout. So from myself and from Russ, thanks ever so much for staying with us, and we hope to see you again soon.